It was a gray evening when Max, just 8 years old, saw his life change radically. His parents, worn down by poverty and incessant conflict, decided they could no longer take care of him. With a hasty goodbye and glances that avoided his own, they left him at the bus station in Greater New York, with nothing but a battered backpack and a crumpled note with his name on it. At that first moment, despair didn't hit him completely. He was more confused than anything else. He sat down on a cold metal bench, clutching his rucksack to his chest, and watched the people hurrying past him without paying him any attention. The station, with its high ceilings and echoing footsteps and voices, seemed like a new and completely intimidating world. As the hours progressed, the reality of his situation began to sink more clearly into his mind. Hunger set in, and the night brought with it a chill that made him shrink under the only long-sleeved shirt he had on. That first night, with nowhere to go, he curled up in a dimly lit corner of the station and finally let the tears fall. The next morning he was starving, his stomach rumbled loudly, and he felt cold. Life began to circulate in the station, and adults in a bad mood began to arrive without looking at him, as if he were invisible. Soon he also noticed others like him, children who seemed to have been left to their own devices, moving with a dexterity that only comes with necessity. He saw them scavenging for scraps of food and begging for coins, and although he hesitated at first, hunger made him follow their example. One such encounter was with Lurie, a boy a few years older, who seemed to have mastered the art of surviving on the streets. With his tangled hair and shrewd eyes, he noticed the newcomer and decided, for reasons he himself couldn't fully explain, to teach him a few essential rules. "Listen, kid," he said, as he handed him half of a half-crumbled and dirty ham sandwich. "Nobody here is anybody's friend, but we can help each other out from time to time. You have to be smart. Keep your eyes open, understand?" Max nodded, devouring the sandwich with more hunger for learning than for food. "And another thing," Lurie continued, his eyes scanning the room. "Whenever you get something good, hide it. There are other kids who will want to take it away from you." Still frightened by his new reality, Max spent that first day observing the people and the other kids in the place. When evening came, he'd managed to get one more piece of bread and a few coins, but they weren't enough to buy anything. He lay down again on the same bench as the night before, his stomach rumbling with hunger. Just as he was falling asleep, a grumpy guy woke him up with a tug. "Get out, you brat. I told you, you're not supposed to hang around here." Without understanding a thing, Max got up in a fright and was kicked out. The boy ran completely scared until he turned a dark corner near the station. With nowhere to go or anyone to ask for help, he wandered down a few streets, looking for somewhere to take shelter. But there were tangles of streets, steep slopes, and hundreds of dead ends. Some of the streets were extremely wide and busy, while others thinned out until they led nowhere, and the smell in the shopping center was of urine, smoke, and sweat. Max turned a few corners and walked 2 blocks, entering a few alleys, but hunger, tiredness, and fear didn't allow him to go much further than that. It was late when he lay down under the balcony of a small shop, his back against the hard wall, and even though he was cold, he soon fell asleep. In the middle of the night, he opened his eyes, frightened, and saw some shadows looming in front of him, the light against his face preventing him from seeing. "Who's there? Who are you?" The boy shouted in fright. "Who are we? Who are you, boy? This is our land." "Land? Yours? Are you deaf?" "Right. I didn't want to trespass." He answered, jumping to his feet. Yes, but you did." Said a second boy approaching. Max took 2 steps backwards, frightened. A third boy grabbed him by the shirt. That morning, he took a generous beating. A punch to the stomach made him lose his breath, followed by kicks to the face and ribs. He fell to the ground and was momentarily saved by a drunk man who was passing by and chased the other boys away, but he didn't offer to help him. He went on his way. Max got up feeling pain and frightened, and almost crawled out of there. He stayed up all night, too scared to sleep. From that day on, his fear never allowed him to sleep in the same place for more than one night, and he always avoided crowded places and deserted ones. That was how his first long days on the streets of New York went. Little by little, he got used to his new life, discovering the best garbage dumps near the big markets to rummage through, getting to know which market vendors were the friendliest. He also gradually ventured out on longer walks, usually in daylight. At night, he returned to the bottom of the stairs of an old commercial building, where, sheltered from the rain, he often shared a room with 1 or 2 other drunken slobs, but none of them harmed him. On the contrary, they usually shared some of the leftovers they got during the day and, every now and then, a drag of a cigarette, which allowed him to forget all his pain for a few intoxicating hours. The first few months soon passed, and he quickly learned to identify the most generous passersby, the safest places to sleep, and how to use every penny he earned or found with the greatest efficiency. Little by little, he acquired a kind of street wisdom, a sagacity that always kept him 2 steps ahead of trouble. So that life strangely started to become too comfortable and without great prospects, also because although he had been around for a while, most people didn't tend to look kindly on him. He was also gradually acquiring a battered appearance, and his unwashed clothes were getting too dirty and torn, as well as his smell, which didn't improve after 1 or 2 rain showers during the week. Little by little, he also realized the immensity of New York. There were huge chunks scattered around that great metropolis. There was the stairwell where he slept, the station he hadn't dared to return to. That morning he decided to explore new corners. He set off without a clear direction, in search of new horizons. It was late afternoon and Max hadn't been able to eat anything. His body was aching and hunger was squeezing his stomach in a way that left him almost in a state of stupor. Hey, what's this, kid? Why are you poking around in this junk? Max looked back in fright and tried to run away, but his legs were paralyzed. With nothing to attack them with, the blood rushed through his veins and his breathing became short. Hey, calm down. We don't want to do anything to you. Are you new here? A second boy asked. You must be hungry. He nodded in agreement. Dude, trust me. If they catch you rummaging through this garbage, they'll beat the shit out of you. Yeah, I know the guy who lives there well too, he said, putting his hand to his head, as if in pain. Look, why don't you come with us to the park? There must be something left for you to eat. It's better than the garbage. Nodded the other. Max, still afraid, but with nothing much to do, decided to follow them. The boys walked around the block, turned a corner, and followed a narrow alleyway downhill until they came out in front of a huge park. Those boys were his new family, and being the youngest of them, Max was treated as well as he had been in a long time, and he tried hard to repay all the generosity he received. As Max grew up on the streets, his ability to adapt and learn quickly set him apart from the rest. At around 10 years old, he began to explore opportunities beyond begging. With his keen eyes, he observed the small businesses that flourished on the sidewalks, newspaper sellers, street vendors. It was a pulsating world of street commerce, and Max felt he could be part of it. On one particularly inspired day, after accumulating a small amount of money through weeks of rigorous saving, Max bought several boxes of chewing gum from a local vendor. With his merchandise in hand, he started selling them at a busy intersection, where the symphony of horns and the incessant jostling of people created the perfect environment for a young street vendor. Success was not immediate. For the first few days, many people passed him by without paying him any attention, but Max didn't give up. He learned to attract the attention of passers-by with smiles and cheerful greetings, to juggle packets of chewing gum, and even to tell quick jokes to brighten up someone's day. Well-thought-out strategies, made not by studying fancy techniques, but by experiencing the streets himself, all to sell a little more. Hey, mister, he shouted to a man in a suit who was hurrying past carrying a dark suitcase. Some chewing gum to bring luck to your meeting? The man, initially surprised, ended up laughing and buying 2 packets. Max realized that his charisma could be as lucrative as his products. Every evening they would go over how their day had gone and how much they had achieved. They would share their best approaches and also the ones that had gone very wrong. Like the time Max had to run away from a gentleman who had been very offended by a joke about an old man and a dog. With all this, Max's ability to negotiate and sell only grew. He expanded his inventory to include water, soft drinks, and even small snacks, transforming his street vending operation into a small but flourishing portable convenience stand that he carried with him every day for long kilometers. During this time, Max never forgot the lessons of everyone who had crossed his path on the streets. He saved every penny with meticulous care, dreaming of the day when he could leave the streets behind for good. On his 13th birthday, Max faced one of the biggest challenges of his young life. The city council, in an effort to clean up the streets, began cracking down on street vendors, confiscating goods and imposing fines. On one tragic day, Max saw his stall dragged away by heartless inspectors while he watched, powerless and furious. That night, he walked the cold streets, feeling a mixture of anger, despair, and a fierce determination to turn this situation around. He would not allow his dream to die at the hands of indifferent bureaucrats. When he returned to the platform and shared this with the others, they agreed, but they didn't know what to do. They were devastated. In the last few days, they had also had all their merchandise confiscated, and they didn't know what to do, apart from going back to a life of begging and petty theft. Max didn't want that. He'd hate to have to do it again. I need to think bigger, he muttered to the others, as an idea began to form in his mind. After the devastating blow to his street stall, Max spent several days planning and weighing up his options. He knew that in order to survive and thrive, he needed a more sustainable plan that would take him away from the vulnerability of the streets. It was then that he decided to take the next step, formalizing his business. The idea was simple but would require all his accumulated knowledge and resources. Open a small kiosk in a busy location where he could sell not only food and drinks, but also offer services such as cell phone recharging and perhaps even small electronics. To do this, Max knew he would need more than money. He would need formal knowledge of management and legislation. With determination, Max started attending a local NGO that offered free courses for young people at risk. He enrolled in entrepreneurship and management courses, absorbing every bit of information like an oasis in the desert. At the same time, he started doing small jobs for local tradesmen, painstakingly saving every penny he earned. There were many nights when he slept hungry to save his few dollars. "You're working hard, Max," commented Marcella, one of the NGO's coordinators, who admired his dedication. "Do you have a plan?" "I need it, Marcella. It's my chance. I won't fail," he replied, with a mixture of hope and resolution in his voice. After months of hard work and learning, Max finally scraped together enough money to rent a small space in the municipal market. With the help of his friends, he set up the kiosk, which quickly became popular due to the quality of the products and the friendly, efficient service. With the kiosk working well, Max began to explore other business opportunities. He realized that in order to really establish himself as an entrepreneur, he would need to expand his operations. Inspired by stories of entrepreneurs who started from scratch, he decided to create a chain of kiosks, each offering a specialized mix of products adapted to the needs of the different neighborhoods. With the help of his 3 friends on the stage who worked almost as hard as Max, because Max was really different, he was driven by a tenacity and an ease of dealing with everything that seemed like he was born for the job. And even though he was younger, the other boys respected him as a leader. He began to apply the principles of economies of scale, negotiating larger purchases to reduce costs and, over time, introducing innovation in service and product offerings. Little by little, Max's name became synonymous with success and resilience among the other street kids. The business expanded and established itself. Max and the others prospered. They now had a roof over their heads and made various plans together, gradually managing to specialize more and more in the art of entrepreneurship. Max was only 16 at the time, but his character and resilience made him look much older. "You've created all this from nothing, Max." "It's incredible," said Cecilio, his friend, during the opening of another kiosk. "I'm going to make sure that no one else has to go through what we did." "Every kiosk is a chance for someone to start building something," said Max, his gaze sweeping the room with a mixture of pride and nostalgia. As Max consolidated his business success and came of age, his influence as an entrepreneur began to extend beyond the kiosks and the local economy. He started training programs for young people in vulnerable situations, offering courses, internship opportunities, and jobs in his companies. It was his way of giving back to the community that, in a way, had shaped his resilient and entrepreneurial character. One hot summer afternoon, while Max was inspecting a new location for another kiosk, a tired-looking woman with familiar features approached him hesitantly. Time had marked her face with deep wrinkles, but her eyes retained the same green color that Max vaguely remembered. "Max," she called out in a trembling voice. Max turned around, his heart beating harder as he recognized the woman in front of him. It was his mother, Maria, whom he hadn't seen since the day he was abandoned so many years ago. "Mother?" That word escaped his lips with a mixture of surprise and suppressed emotion. I'm so sorry for everything, my son." Tears began to stream down Maria's face as she tried to gather the strength to continue. "I have no excuses for what I did, only regret and the hope that perhaps, one day, you will forgive me." Max felt a whirlwind of emotions. Old pain, repressed anger, all mixed with a surprising sense of relief at finally facing the ghost that had haunted him since childhood. He began, pausing to control his voice. "I forgave you, Mom, a long time ago. I had to in order to move on, but I'm glad you came. And Dad, where is he?" Maria sobbed, saying, "He died a few years ago. He never forgave himself for everything either. We both looked for him, but we didn't find him. We thought for a long time that, it's okay." "Mom," Max interrupted her, relieved and grateful for her son's forgiveness. They spent hours talking, reconnecting, while Max shared his life and his dreams, not just for the future of his business, but for the community as a whole. With the emotional reunion and reconciliation with his mother, Max felt that one chapter of his life was closing, while another, more hopeful one was beginning. He used his success not only to expand his business, but also to promote significant social change. Under his leadership, training programs grew, offering more than professional skills. They provided a second chance for many young people, just as he had received from mentors throughout his career. Each of these young people could be me, Max often said during his visits to the training centers. And every opportunity we create can be the difference between choosing the easy path or the right one. Max became a successful entrepreneur and a great community leader. He became an inspiration, an example of how determination and compassion can turn adversity into strength for the greater good. He lectures all over America. Max bought his mother a house and kept it well until the end of his life. Thank you very much to those who have supported the channel financially through the link in the comment pinned. This helps me to bring more and more stories to you. And don't forget to like and also subscribe to continue receiving the new stories.